understanding of impacts, the benefits, and barriers that must be overcome in order to take advantage of this new reality. Now I'd like to pause and introduce you to Robin Champ. Robin is the VP of Strategic Foresight here at LBL Strategies and our moderator for today. All yours, Robin.
Thank you, Randy. Hello, everyone. The presentation will run for about 45 minutes, and that will be followed by a 15-minute Q&A session. The session is being recorded, but we will turn the recording off before the Q&A session begins. We'll make an announcement when the recording stops so that you can feel comfortable asking questions in a non-attribution environment. You can feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time, and I can ask them on your behalf. Or at the end of the presentation, you can raise your hand like Dan did, and you can engage directly with Maria at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'm very excited to introduce Maria Bothwell, who's going to talk to us about convergence of AI and the workforce. Maria is the CEO of Toffler Associates. She is a Foresight professional, futurist, and strategic advisor who helps Fortune 500 and government organizations gain clarity around the disruptions they face so they can anticipate and capitalize on the opportunities change brings. Toffler Associates' approach is rooted in the ideas and methodologies of world-renowned futurists Alvin and Heidi Toffler, whose work foreshadowed the sweeping effects of rapid technology development on people, businesses, and government. Toffler Associates serves defense, homeland security, and other clients who have a longer-term interest in identifying risks and opportunities. Recent challenges include technology scanning and building innovation roadmaps, developing future of workforce strategy, climate scenario analysis and response, and building security and resilience posture. Previously, Maria served as managing director in North Highland Consulting, a global business consulting firm, vice president of new market development for AllConnect, a communication, media, and energy service provider, and as a consultant at Arthur Andersen Business Consulting and Ernst & Young Management Consulting. Maria holds a BS in Industrial Engineering and Operations Research and MBA from Virginia Tech. She chairs the Engineering Education Advisory Board for Virginia Tech, and she also earned a certificate of cuisine from the Cordon Bleu Paris and volunteers as a chef feeding the homeless and hungry. So with that, please welcome Maria Bothwell.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate being invited to join this group today. I am going to share my screen, hopefully easily, right? Let's see. What I would like to do is share this in presentation mode. So you might need to confirm that you're seeing the actual presentation mode versus the one that has the notes, because I have two screens.
Yep, we can see your presentation.
Okay, that's great. And Robin, the way my screens are, I can't see the chat right now. So if questions come in, I can pull the presentation down, but just help me navigate that if you wouldn't mind.
Do you prefer to answer them during the presentation or at the end?
Probably at the end. However, we can take a break partway through if something is, creating some energy for discussion.
Okay, I'll monitor the chat, and if something is pressing, you all just put it in the chat that you want me to interrupt Maria. Otherwise, we're going to save all the questions until the end.
Okay, that's great. What I wish I could do, I will. I'm not even going to worry. We're just going to dive in. So one thing I wanted to share with y'all, really, with this discussion today, we're focusing on, not just AI and how AI is going to sort of change into this AI-enabled organization, but as leaders, how do leaders need to be thinking about that reinvention? So, that's sort of the nature of the talk today. And a couple things just from a foundational standpoint. Before digging into our content, we want to understand that, AI, Gen AI, et cetera, has and will continue to have profound influence on the workforce. So as AI is transcending the status of a mere tool. It stands as a foundational technological advancement, a general purpose technology with potential to revolutionize entire industries and society at large. So comprehending that vastness of potential change is pretty important when you think about how do we effectively prepare. In terms of benefits, we're all probably pretty attuned to this. AI, can diminish human error, boost productivity, expedite decision-making on processes, and refine pattern identification. It's clearly evolving from single function to multifunction and even more human functionality. However, we've got to keep in mind the concerns surrounding elevated cost. One that was actually recently written about in the Washington Post, I think on Monday, about the increase in energy use required for Gen AI. Job displacement obviously is on the mind of a lot of people, ethical considerations, and conceivably, the erosion of human creativity. And how does that, affect society at large? One of the things that I found fascinating about that Washington Post article this week is when we think about all the aspects of how the electric utility industry is changing, from infrastructure of transmission and distribution being upgraded, electrifying the grid, the policy changes that are incenting investment in renewables and infrastructure, and the shift to renewable power sources and even nuclear power. All of this is happening around us. Meanwhile, when it comes to Gen AI, and just in the last 12 months, the increase and the proliferation of playing around with Gen AI, but the amount of use that it requires. It was noted that Georgia Power, which serves the Atlanta metro area, they just recently updated their 10-year megawatt forecast and doubled it based on the new realization of what these data centers are causing their area. And for those of you that have any ties to the electric utility industry, having a change that's 10 years out is not really what they operate on. They do 25-year CapEx plans because that's how long, it takes to plan. They're planning for power generation sources 25 years out. So changing something that, late in the cycle, it doesn't necessarily help them get a new generation plan on board or even fundamentally change the technology and the transmission and distribution. So it's a pretty significant issue. Meanwhile, we've got infrastructure that's deteriorating across the country. So I say that just as a real live example of how many tentacles are out there that it is affecting that aren't necessarily things people are thinking about at the beginning. So, the technology is far from static. It's undergoing constant evolution and will continue to do so. So I think we all probably can agree on that. So today's discussion, we're really going to just, we're going to focus on that organizational adapting to the future. We're going to use a Toffler Associate disruption planning model. It's something that we developed years ago. We pulled 5 of the factors to focus on for the discussion today. And just some core fundamental assumptions. We all agree AI is a foundational technology. And we've got to be thinking about that. It's not just a tool with a use case here and there, but really it's fundamentally going to be changing everything we do in our work and in our personal and out of work lives. So I think that's something that we've got to be thinking of. It's not just work, it's also how is it changing our society and our individual behaviors as well, not just now, but 10 years, 20 years from now. So one of the things that Toffler Associates frequently does is we'll pull together a group of experts. And we, in fact, have a group, our experts in residence, that we convene periodically on topics. So we had convened them in addition to about 10 other experts across different sectors to talk about the disruptive AI technology and the workforce. And really one of the things that we were trying to focus on there is identifying what are possible second and third order effects so we could really figure out a way to be thinking about this. You know, just like so many problem solving that takes place in organizations, it's okay, we want to, I don't know, we want to remove the dangerous aspects of inspecting and repairing oil pipelines. You know, that might be, you know, the task. So it's a function, we're focusing on that. We're not necessarily thinking about all the other ripple effects of that. So that was one of the things that we talked about. Probably about half the room had some connection with the Department of Defense. So there was a flare of that in the discussion. So AI today. As we all know, you know, AI, machine learning, has been around for a while. This isn't brand new. However, it has certainly escalated in public discussion and discourse over the last 12 months with the introduction of ChatGPT, Claude, Bard, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, on one hand, that's a wonderful thing. It actually allows playing around at, you know, at all levels, you know, from children to students to folks like us in our professional careers, but it makes it approachable and available. So, you know, that helps to mature the technology. It also creates a little bit of a free-for-all with that experimentation. And that's where, you know, things are going to be broken and new rules are going to have to be made. So, you know, as much as we, that leaders of organizations, can be thinking ahead of that, the better off we'll be. So, you know, on these 2 pages, it's really just listed the way that AI is starting to mature beyond single function use cases to become more human-like in its work. And, you know, it causes us to think of several questions. Where will we create new applications in our business and in our personal lives? And how is your organization currently using AI? How does it encourage the use of experimentation and innovation? And when you think about your organization or the organizations you serve, how is that going to look 3 years from now or even 7 years from now? What new jobs are going to be created because of these new operational environments? You know, it's certainly going to put a stress on the STEM talent requirements. And we've already been under great stress for that in this country. And from a leadership perspective, how does it change our jobs as leaders? What type of not just acumen, but practical deployment do we also have to have in play for us? So we will do a discussion about the Toffler's disruption planning model. And you know, this is just recognizing there really is no existing playbook out there for leaders or organizations that are transforming their organizations into AI-enabled organizations. There's nothing out there that we can just point to and say that's the best practice. So keep in mind about that. This provides a framework for one to use. Maybe it will become a best practice. That would be wonderful. But there's not a whole lot to go on right now. So we're going to go on what we know has worked in the past and applying it in this future setting. So the 5 areas of this disruption planning model we thought were especially relevant for AI and the AI-enabled workforce is policies and practices. And this is both the formal and informal rules an organization establishes and practices. You know, both that are, you know, the documented, but also the organizational cultural norms that reflect the values. Enterprise strategies. So the big questions on how an organization defines itself relative to its services and products, the market and constituents it serves, its differentiators, and its culture. People and team management, the structures, approaches, and skills of supervisory and management roles that define how people and teams are managed and maximize their productivity and experience. Individuals, the skills, behaviors, and beliefs of people who are providing the labor to an organization and how those affect their contribution to the organization. I also think with individuals, you cannot leave out what are they being exposed to and using outside the workforce, because that obviously impacts their expectations within the workforce. Society and markets, the broad sweeping changes taking place outside the organization that impact the nature of the workforce and how it interacts with the organizations. So we'll go through each of these, but the way the model works is you're thinking about a particular set of use cases within an organization, and you would want to go through these 5 areas and think about what are the implications, and not just that immediate impact, but also, okay, what might be the second or third order effects of these. So before we dive in, are there any questions or thoughts that we should explore? And I'm going to see if I can.
We can keep on going, Maria.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we'll dive into policies and practices. So the integration of AI into the workforce, does offer immense potential to automate tasks, enhance productivity, augment human capabilities, and also present a range of policy and governance challenges that organizations need to be considering. So for today and in the future, we need to be thinking about, addressing data privacy, accountability, regulation, and risk management. And this would be, having to do with all aspects of data privacy and security. So from an individual level, from a customer level, but also from an operational informational level that might be considered competitive or IP. Determine appropriate levels of autonomous decision-making. What makes sense for the human to be doing, what makes sense for the AI to be doing from a decision standpoint, and then foster responsible AI principles and framework. So there's many organizations out there. I was talking to a former client of mine who's the CEO of an organization, and they've adopted a mindset of go and play, test things out. It's an experimental, innovative culture. So test things out, and then we'll evaluate it as a group. So in a sense, they're crowdsourcing with their employees that go and play and test and evaluate. And the applications that come out of that will then be what they are going to mature and implement from a customer standpoint. So there's a term out there, FAFO. I'm not going to say what the first word is, but it rhymes with puck. So puck around and find out, but it's FAFO. So that's a term I keep on hearing at various client sites. But again, it's that mindset of go, play, test, and evaluate. One aspect to also think about that is absolutely critical here is that idea of feedback loops post-launch. So not just playing around and testing things out and understanding the implications or the side effects of what's happening, in that test phase, but the post-launch and there's different ways to do that. We can apply an old technique of red teaming from an internal and external perspective as a way to test and get additional feedback that might come back post-launch. But there may also be other things that come out afterward that it would be wise to think about it. So for pharmaceuticals, for example, even with the long FDA drug approval process, which many cases takes years, and the in-depth clinical trials, there are still new drugs pulled off the market every year because of unidentified side effects. So there's a pharmacovigilance that exists for doctors and patients to report those side effects to the manufacturer and the FDA. And that's something that evolved, but where there's a community interested in paying attention and the feedback gets back and decisions are made after it. So, that's an older process. We might want to just, call that an analog process in some ways, because it takes people taking the drugs in real life settings and then reporting those side effects. But the fact is there is a process for that feedback loop to take place. So that's something to be thinking about ahead of time too. So by addressing these policies and governance challenges, we will at least be thinking about how can we transform AI in a responsible way. Enterprise strategy. So AI-enabled technologies can impact, small, medium, and large organizations at a strategic level and over the long term. It's going to influence market opportunities, competitive dynamics, and just that nature of work. And this is where, we're going to really want to evaluate the market opportunities, the competitive dynamics with AI, identify what are uniquely human skills and abilities, and how are we maximizing those. You develop strategies to integrate AI while leveraging those human strengths, and how those human strengths can evolve as well. And from a cultural standpoint, AI enablement, it will impact culture, which is defined, attitudes, beliefs, behaviors. And thinking about that impact early in the development will allow the planning for adoption that aligns with the culture and the values that an organization wants to maintain or even evolve to. We think about culture's connective tissue is really one-on-one relationships within an organization. That's where those reinforcing loops are on those behaviors and attitudes and beliefs. So, what is going to happen as AI evolves to become more human and forms those one-on-one relationships? And we're already seeing that AI application, AI as therapist. Trust is built between the patient and the AI. And in often cases, the patient is more forthcoming about their conditions, and the AI is able to show sympathy without judgment. So, that's already happening. And so if we think about how does that potentially manipulate culture or or help adapt a culture into a different way. I was on a conversation or in a group call earlier this week with a group of executives, and we were going through an exercise, and it was like a cyber sort of tabletop exercise, a cyber risk discussion. So we were all taking on different roles on that exec team. But what we were operating under was the aspect that the CEO of this organization was AI enabled. So, and the fact is there are AI-enabled CEOs out there that take the insights and recommendations from the key functional leaders around the table or around the boardroom, so to speak, and uses the AI and the language models to synthesize and make recommendations, pulling in other information and data that's fed into its system. And I haven't actually seen that operate, so I can't offer any judgment on it, but it was a fascinating conversation and tabletop exercise for me to participate in. So, by the way, these quotes that I periodically am putting up here are from our expert conversation that we had when we pulled the experts in residence together. So, this one, hits on the multinational corporation. And one of the things that I think is really interesting to think about global operations is that idea that global operations, customers, employees differ from country to country. That's been around as long as there's been global organizations. But more importantly, when we think about how does access to technology or differing data or privacy policies impact what's happening in country, as well as that country's culture influence AI enablement strategy. So, we now need to overlay, it's not just the business strategy, but that AI enablement strategy into the overlay with the various aspects of the company operations in the various countries. So it just, makes that AI enablement strategy a little bit more complex, but hopefully if it's done properly in a way that it's going to be more effective. So people and team. The advent of AI is transforming not only the nature of work, but also the dynamics of team and team management. Organizations must adapt their leadership approaches and reconfigure their teams to effectively harness the power of AI and human collaboration. So this includes cultivating the human AI teaming and collaborative skills, communicate vision for human AI collaboration, and enhance recruiting and training for the AI workforce. There was a recent article in one of the Harvard Business Reviews from this winter. I forget which edition, but it was definitely a 2024 article. But it was talking about the importance of defining and articulating the purpose of the AI tool or use case early, and that pros and cons aren't enough, for effective enablement, but that really defining what that purpose is and how does that tools align to the values of the organization. And that being a pretty critical success factor in that rolling out to employees as well as to customers. So, if we think about that could include, is AI designed to assist humans with unsafe tasks, like drones flying pesticide or distributing pesticide or, maintaining and repairing pipelines, or is it for cost efficiency and reduction, like replacing human tasks at a call center? Just being able to be transparent about what the purpose is and what is the implication to that that part of the operation is going to help the success of future implementations. How will AI evolve like a new employee evolves? This is an interesting conversation I had with one of our more junior employees recently. That idea that, if you bring in, let's say just a recent college graduate, you're going to see them progress through learning different capabilities and learning different methods and having different experiences. And their credentials are going to get stronger and stronger as each year. So, are we thinking about that from an AI standpoint too? How is that AI evolving like a new employee evolves? Does it get better and smarter over time? And how does it do that? Is it helping us, identify, like from a talent and a recruitment standpoint, is it helping forecast where those capability gaps are going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? And I think that's something that people aren't necessarily thinking about. They're thinking about, an AI application as a, it might be pairing with a team, but they're not necessarily thinking about how that team evolves or that individual evolves and how the AI evolves through the course of time and working together. So, by understanding those strengths and limitations of the AI and human capabilities, the organization will be able to become more effective at creating that right teaming environment. And one of the things we have a little model we also built just to be able to understand the difference. But this graphic sort of shows that, at first it might be that AI supports the human work. So really understanding how are they supporting the human work, and down at the bottom of those little bullets are really like, what are unique human skills in this model? As we move to the left, the AI starts augmenting the human work, and then ultimately the AI may replace the human work. And those examples down at the bottom are actual examples of today. So striking that right balance between that, that human and that AI, and that the way that AI is going to learn and evolve, but also what is uniquely human. And it may be some aspect of creative skills or empathetic skills, but how do you actually maximize that team? Individuals. So it's important to remember that the future AI-enabled work environment should not be viewed as binary. Instead, it's a spectrum in which organizations can continue to leverage humans and AI to augment the benefits and create more efficient and profitable organizations. So this involves emphasizing continuous learning and adapting the work with the AI. Understanding that balance between human skills and AI capabilities, and consider personal AI assistance and micro-credentialing. AI is not just transforming organizations and teams, but it's also profoundly impacting the lives of individuals outside of work and their perception of their value in an AI-infused world, both inside and outside of work. So I just take note of the credentialing and your personal AI. Think about, today AI is generally viewed as belonging to the employer and being used by the employee. However, like many technologies, the cost curve is going to drop and the AI is going to become more of a consumer product. So, from that perspective, how will education as an institution start changing for future generations? Will AI be taught for AI literacy? Will AI be taught as tools? Will AI also influence the teaching of or even the application of skills like math and language, where really it's already proving incredibly beneficial? Will the alpha generation be our first AI native generation? And then how are employers going to be influencing that education institution, when they think about their future workforce 5 or 10 years out? So that successful future workforce is really going to be embodying individuals who embrace that continuous learning but also cultivate their uniquely human strengths or their individual strengths, but that will be willing to collaborate with the AI. So this was another discussion I had with that same colleague of mine, the younger colleague, but thinking about for individual development and career progression, when will resumes include the capabilities and results from our personal AI? And particularly that AI that progresses through our career alongside of us. It'll be a new model where, those of us in the room that are as old as I am, and I'm in my 50s, that the idea that's sort of mind blowing. But if we think about the people that we're looking to hire that are in their young 20s or in college today or high school today, that's going to be a very normal part of their ongoing career development. And who owns that AI IP? Is it the individual or is it the various companies that AI was deployed in? But maybe the individual brought it. They brought their assistant to the table. Finally, society and markets. So in our interconnected world, AI is not just solely a tool for our American stakeholders, but also a powerful tool with significant contributions from the non-Western nations. So, this is one where, we've got to be thinking about when we're thinking about organizations that are based here, headquartered here, respecting the cultural values, the risk tolerance of other cultures and the preferences. Ensuring equitable access to AI through the infrastructure and resources and education, and collaborate globally to shape what ethical AI advancements means. So just thinking about the AI investing in infrastructure, this is going to be a key to providing access to computing resources, data, and training platforms, particularly in underserved regions. And then also monitoring, mitigating AI-driven inequities, establishing mechanisms to monitor the impact of AI on income disparity and taking corrective measures. I was thinking about this from the standpoint, there was an interesting story in The Economist about how AI is really making a difference in third world countries. And the aspect is it's providing and supporting better healthcare, better education, and better informed citizens in particularly remote areas. So, I had mentioned that the AI therapist. Well, and this would be another example where AI nurses, people are just more comfortable and less embarrassed to talk about their health issues with the AI nurses because they don't judge. There's also the ability to get medical treatment like ultrasounds for pregnant women to far more remote locations. So that distributed healthcare model is making a difference in those remote locations. From an education standpoint, AI's it has an ability to learn those languages much faster. It can translate books. As well as adapting teaching methods to individual students' learning needs. So when we think about also just that diversity of thinking, we also need to be thinking about how AI from a global operations, how will US companies operate AI within those countries that don't necessarily have the technology or the resources? And how is it changing from one country to another? How will equity be impacted? How are you as a leader going to support those various countries in your operations? And I think of, the predicament of, in India, there was a huge increase in call centers the last 2-3 decades. And that made a positive economic impact to the population there and brought many people into, a newer, middle class there. Well, the same shift is happening, but the other direction, where many of those call centers are being shifted and replaced by AI. So, how is this influencing not just the organization's culture, but if you think about the impact to the region that that company operates in, how is it impacting migration or security or economic growth of that country or stability of that country? And those are things that when we're thinking about broader AI enablement across the organization, we will want to be thinking about those subsequent effects. So mapping, going from now we're thinking through all these impacts. What are the steps we can take to mitigate risk? So first, it's going through those various framework elements when we're thinking about what aspects of the organization are being AI enabled. That allows us to think about the implications and second order implications as well. And at Toffler, we like looking at the broader ecosystem. So what's included in that ecosystem includes suppliers, customers, the workforce inside the workplace, as well as where they live and the communities that we operate in. It may also include the regulatory environment around. So that ecosystem is a very broader way of looking at an organization's value chain and really understanding what are those impacts across that ecosystem. And then like many things, assessing those benefits and trade-offs from that. We can then develop our strategies where we're focused on either mitigating risk or capturing new opportunities. Or to me, the thing that is often overlooked is how can we actually influence the future? So it may be the future for our organization, but it might also be the future beyond our organization that has a ripple effect to other organizations. So we're not just being users of AI, but we're also architecting how it will be empowered by others. And then finally, initiate what are the actions we can actually do today or decisions that need to be made today. And that might just mean that, we're changing the nature of our R&D or how we are communicating and engaging trust with our workforce and with our customer base. And then creating those plans for the coming years. So all this is great, but there's probably one big elephant in the room that I think of as trust. That is a really important factor. And in the recent 2023 Gallup poll on trust in institutions, basically it shrank across the board from 21 to 23, and it was pretty bad in 23, but I'll share a couple of the stats. So all-time low with Congress of 8% trust levels, 14% trust in big business, 26% trust in large tech companies. So I was sort of shocked there was a 12-point difference there. I thought those would be closer. And then this was also an interesting one on the high side, 65% trust in small business. And yeah, I don't know the exact reasons for that, but my guess as to why that is because in smaller businesses, people have a closer relationship with the leaders in that business. So there is more transparency. There's transparency in decisions. There's transparency in implications of those decisions. So as AI systems take on more responsibility in the workplace, there's the real risk that humans become suspicious and resentful of their automated coworkers. So without transparency and communication, or even good old-fashioned change management, employees may feel threatened or in competition with AI, which could lead to a reluctance or outright mistrust in the recommendations from the AI. So thinking about that from an AI adoption standpoint, for it to be successful, leaders really must prioritize establishing trust between their workforce and the machines. But it starts with establishing trust between themselves as leaders and the workforce. And really, communicating transparently about ongoing education about the purpose of the AI and the benefits. So building trust, transparency, we mentioned, or I mentioned that earlier. Leadership credibility, this is one that, in some places where leaders have already built up trust and credibility with their workforce, they're going to have an easier time employing AI, implementing it, and then also for employees to trust the AI systems that leaders introduce. That reputation is going to influence credibility and enable that transition. Walk the talk. Leaders need to model that they are also able to do human AI collaboration if they want their employees to embrace it. So they need to learn the tools themselves and demonstrate a willingness for that lifelong learning and changing their skills. And that will help enable trust. The employee experience. If employees already distrust leadership, possibly due to poor treatment or lack of integrity, they will project these feelings also onto the AI. So, thinking that negative employee experience is going to seed mistrust. And that's, pretty standard today with other types of transformation. And then similar customer relationships, the importance of, AI trust is likelier to prosper in companies with strong customer relationships, satisfaction, and loyalty, stemming from leadership. And usually employee experience and customer relationships, they flow together. If it's bad in both. So just wrapping up, Toffler Associates is a future-focused strategy organization. We work with commercial clients, government agencies, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and we help identify what are these potential disruptions, what are the scenarios to exercise, and then really focus on developing resilient strategies and informing immediate decisions and actions that organizations can take today. So with that, I will close, and I'm going to close this, stop sharing, and so I can see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Maria. We do have a couple questions in the chat. I'd also like to invite folks to raise your hand and come on camera if